Filmmaker in Focus is a project of the Maine Outdoor Film Festival.
This summer, Portland, Maine hosts the 2022 Maine Outdoor Film Festival. 3 weekends of outdoor film shown outdoors at the Gulf of Maine Research Institute, the Eastern Promenade, and Apres. So, whether you spend your day on the trail, ocean, in the mountains, or enjoying Portland's many cultural and culinary options, we'll see you at MOFF in the evenings. Each night will feature a shorts block or a feature-length film related to outdoor adventure or conservation from some of Maine and the world's best adventure filmmakers. Mark your calendars. Advance tickets go on sale April 1st.
The connection between trees and waves is something I've been fascinated by my whole life. With each mission to Maine's rocky, forested coast, I thought about the possibilities of a wooden board shaped from one of these magnificent cedar trees. Each step of this journey would help me better understand the connection between wood and water, and my place in the process. Sketches and measurements brought me to the blank, and I was ready to start finding the board that was hidden beneath the sharp lines and hard edges. one shaving that fell to the ground was forgotten, and as the board started to show itself within the planks, my time in the studio often became more about the material lost than the material found. With each tap of the mallet, I was careful not to overstep my boundaries with the material. Each knot and plank had a mind and growth of its own, and I wanted the board to reflect the rich history within the tree. Those late nights in the studio were the ones that I felt most connected to the material. Taking moments to look at what had emerged was a pretty incredible feeling. But that's not to say that this project was easy. The final coat of epoxy sealed in every plain rub of sandpaper, containing the tree and the stories of its grain to only be told in the natural environment, in the water. There's something incredible about riding a wave on a board that grew from the land. I can feel below my feet the knots and lines of grain, and with each ride down the line I better understand the connection between wood and water, and why generations of indigenous peoples that came before me used trees for watercraft on their sacred lands. While the months of March and April didn't provide me with the swell I was hoping to take this board out in, I learned from this process that we are all at the mercy of our waves, waters, and forests, constantly searching for the balance. I found mine from a tree to a board.
Is it hot? You can just drop it.
Tree to Board is dedicated to the Wabanaki people of Maine, whose land I reside on today. I urge you to make sustainable choices about the wood you buy and the environment that surrounds you. Thank you for watching my film.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Filmmaker in Focus. I'm Maddie Roy, and today I'm interviewing Torsten Brinkema, the young man who made an autobiographical documentary called Tree to Board about his process shaping a tree into a surfboard. Torsten, thank you so much for joining me today. So is this one of the first film projects that you've actually made?
Yeah, I would say this is the first film that I've put sort of my full attention to. I've been making films for a long time, not really with the intention of sort of sharing them with a larger community, and I think this is the first one that I really put out there, and I've been blessed to have lots of people enjoying watching it, so it's been really cool.
Yeah, what a great response. You got into a festival. I saw the write-up about you for the Colby magazine. That's pretty good for your first try.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited
if you were to keep
on
making films, you would probably be successful. can't wait to see what else is in store for you. So I also saw you seem to be sort of a jack of all trades. I saw that you have like an apparel company, you do work with videos, and then you're obviously into woodworking as well. So what are you most passionate about?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's definitely all of that comes from a passion just for the arts and for creative expression. And I think sort of after my high school years, I stepped back and sort of took a moment to think about what I was passionate about, and then going into school, seeing all of these different, majors and focuses in the arts. And then with starting my company, We Art, the apparel and art company, I started featuring young artists and putting their artwork on t-shirts. And I was working with printmakers, with photographers, painters, sort of all of the mediums. And I think that really opened up my mind to all of the possibilities of that creative expression, and it made me want to try all of them. And so I guess I just sort of started exploring all of those mediums and ended up with photography, videography, and sculpture being sort of my favorite modes of expression, but definitely just developed a passion for the arts and for, paying attention to lots of young artists that are making amazing things that might be overlooked in some areas.
That's wonderful. That's really a great project, especially for someone so young to already be working on something like that. So why were you inspired to make the surfboard itself and then to actually film the process this time?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I started looking for sort of surfboard creation. I made a foam board sort of right when COVID started. That was like my COVID project. I got kicked out of school because everyone got sent home. I think it was March, and I was at home just with my family, and I decided that I wanted to shape a surfboard for the first time. So I made one out of foam, and then that really sort of opened up the surfboard making realm for me. And I'd been really passionate about woodworking and making things out of wood through my sculpture courses at Colby. And so naturally I started looking into wooden surfboard creation. And that following fall semester of school, which is this past fall, I decided that I wanted to make a surfboard out of wood, and I actually made it into an independent study through Colby. So they paid for all of the resources, and I had the sculpture studio to work in, along with the help of my professor and lots of other people in the surfboard making industry. And so that fall semester and into the winters when I was making the board, and sort of intuitively I was filming the whole process almost as a sketchbook of the creation of the board, because it was my first wooden board that I'd ever made, and I wanted to create sort of a detailed experience of making that board. And I think through the process of shaping it and those countless hours of sanding and planing in the studio is when I sort of created the idea in my head of thinking about a film that could come out of all of this footage, and bigger ideas about what it meant to be making a wood board in Maine, and sourcing from sustainable wood and sustainable wood from Maine, sustainable cedar. And I think after that whole process of thinking about different shots, thinking about what the film would mean, and then surfing the board, it was only until after that I started sort of piecing those together. And it was really an exciting process to look back at everything that I had done, and then piece it together and make it into something that people could experience in 16 minutes instead of, 60 hours or 100 hours in the studio.
Wow, that is a lot of dedication. It was making me think about when I was watching it, about how it's kind of rare today to find products that are made with that level of like care and effort. We want everything really fast and really cheap. So was that also part of your motivation for taking so much time? You just like wanted to show people the value of actually putting that care into something?
Definitely, and I think it was almost sort of acting against those 21st century ideals where we want things made fast and cheap. And I think I'd sort of brought it back to the roots of surfboard creation, and that was one of the things that I had researched a lot and was thinking about while I was making the board, is sort of indigenous practices of surfboard making, but also like canoe making, and thinking about the Wabanaki people of Maine and how they made dugout canoes from Maine cedar. And I think like researching that gave me a better connection to the materials that I was using. And so those countless hours of working on the wood, I think, brought me closer to the material, but also to the people that had done a similar thing before my time. And so I think that ended up being a really spiritual process for me, and something that I felt was my sort of escape during COVID and all of this craziness that's happened during the past year. So yeah.
Did you find out anything like during your research that you were surprised to know you didn't know before about surfboard making?
Yeah, well, I honestly didn't know much about surfboard creation or sort of indigenous like watercraft before doing this. I knew a little bit about canoes and canoe construction before, but I think it wasn't until during the research that I sort of opened my eyes up to all of these different practices and techniques. And so it was an amazing experience, because I feel like I learned so much just dedicating myself to this one project for so long.
Yeah. So you talk about feeling connected to the earth throughout your process, and I'm curious as to your perspective on climate change. Do you feel that we're headed in the right direction as the country or as a planet, like to protect ourselves and our planet?
I don't feel like we're quite headed in the right direction yet. And I think that it's possible if we focus on sort of returning to older practices, or even thinking about like the way that Native Americans and indigenous peoples respected the land that they lived on. And I think we're sort of doing the opposite right now. And I was really focusing on sort of the ideas about surfers and climate change, because surfers are people who at first glance are people that really respect the water and respect the environment, because it's what provides them with their sport and their passion. But I think oftentimes it's really easy to get caught up with all the new materials and boards and all this stuff, and forget about respecting the environment and respecting the water. And that's part of the reason why I really wanted to make a wooden board. It's because so many of these foam boards are made with toxic materials that after they're used 100 times maybe end up in a landfill, or end up back in the water that they had once surfed on, and then affecting sea life, marine life. And I think that's sort of an example of a toxic relationship, is something that enters the water that is then thrown out into that same environment. And so I hope to be riding my wooden board for as long as I live, and then pass it on to my kids. And the construction is definitely meant to last that long and not be harmful to the environment.
Oh, yeah, that would be a wonderful like heirloom to pass down. That's one of the coolest types of heirlooms I've ever heard of. Thank you so much for joining me, Torsten. This has been a great talk.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is awesome.